It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. Pete Francis alongside Willie Witten. Today, our special guest is Mike Brookfield. He just released a new album, Built to Last. Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to finally chat to you. I've been following you.
Yeah, for sure. We've had you on an album sampler before. We've been covering your music for quite a while, so good to finally be chatting now.
Yeah, I think maybe around about 2015 or 16, I came across you guys. There wasn't that many people covering, blues rock in the way that you guys do, and I love the way that you bring out those regular videos. Keep me informed of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the idea, and we definitely appreciate everyone's support from people like you. So, Mike, you just dropped the new album, but before we get into that, let's kind of talk about your beginnings in music. Tell us, how you got set on your path to a career as being a musician.
Well, like most people like myself, kind of blues rock artists, it comes through your parents, I think, my mum and dad. My mom had kind of like Van Morrison, Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen on permanent rotation in the kitchen. My dad's a big rock and roll fan, so he had all the classics like Derek and the Dominos and, Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and all that stuff on the go. So, and he was like a really kind of early fan of like Dire Straits, So when I hit about 12 or 13 and expressed an interest in the guitar, it was kind of like, snapped up. So I spent a few years kind of like jobbing as a musician around Liverpool. And then I managed to get this kind of great opportunity to go to the West End and play on musicals. And I was really into kind of rock and roll and rockabilly guitar. And ended up working for a producer there called Bill Kenwright, who runs a lot of West End shows. So I ended up working on Elvis productions and these kind of big West End shows that needed rockabilly guitar, but they also needed guys who could be quite versatile and also do a turn. Like I'd do a turn as like Eddie Cochran or something like that, Mm-hmm. So I spent like 4.5 years doing that, touring around the UK and different countries doing playing rock and roll, but it was really good education for me because it was authentic. You had to cover Scotty Moore, really authentic style, and then you had to do the James Burton, and then you had to be able to sing, and you had to be animated and perform and pull all the shapes, and it was a really good education that, because like every day you'd have a note session, it'd be like, Mike, smile more, Mike, move more, project, all of these kind of things. So it was better than any kind of college course you could ever do, really, because it was in front of a live audience and it was you were being paid, so you had to step up and be professional straight away. So that was kind of like I think every musician has like one gig that kind of like really advances them quite quickly. I think if you speak to most musicians, they'll kind of reference some point early on in the career that kind of really got the chops and that together. So I'd kind of reference that. And then I kind of worked with my wife. My wife's a singer, Grania Brookfield, for a good few years. I did an album in the mid-2000s called Skin on Bone, which I didn't really push too much, but it was only really when I did Love Breaks the Fall in about 2015 that I really kind of had the confidence to put myself forward. Up until that point, I was working I was really lucky because I got involved with TV stations in Ireland. So I'd end up working with like Rod Stewart and Tom Jones and Lionel Richie and loads of pop stars like over here, like Westlife. And, they'd come through the TV stations and they'd need a live band to back them up a lot of the time. So that was kind of really good because it was a very professional environment, But like I said, it was about 2015 when I put Love Breaks the Fall together that I had the confidence to kind of reach out to the whole blues community and try and I think because of the place that YouTube was and the way that the internet had developed as well, it was easier for me to go, well, I can just do this on my own. I don't need anybody. I can just make the album, stick it out there, and So and between now and then, all I've been doing is like working as a jobbing guitar player, so I still work as a gun for hire, if you know what I mean, because that's how I pay the mortgage. And I'd be out every weekend playing with different bands and stuff like that, but also kind of just recording and pushing my own music. And obviously, if you're aware of my YouTube channel, I do a lot of teaching as well.
So, Mike, I just, on a personal aside, you've mentioned a couple of times to have the confidence to put out something of your own. To me, that strikes me as odd, because you just also spoke about how you were in these professional settings, you know, playing, being the backing band for Westlife, being on West End shows and things like that. So what exactly was the confidence? I'm trying to get at, what was that feeling? What were you feeling that didn't allow you to really say, hey, I'm good enough, I can do this?
Well, I think when you experience a lot of different professional situations, you start weighing up what is the ideal scenario for you to be at as a musician. And I think at some point the penny drops that, you know, writing your own music and playing your own music to an audience, whether big or small, is really the ultimate goal, you know, to leave a legacy behind of like 10 albums on iTunes or whatever, you know. That's, you know, because I started, we have 3 boys as well. So like our oldest one now is 12 and the youngest is nearly 2. So I think when you kind of have kids as well, so around about 2015, the oldest was about 5. And you start thinking about, you know, what is your legacy for what you're doing, you know? And I think that definitely there's a collision of a lot of different things where you've experienced so much as a sideman, and you start weighing up, you know, what is the ultimate thing that you can do? What is the ultimate challenge? You know, I was really into competitive cycling as well, you know, so there's an element of me which just kind of want to push myself as hard as you can. And if you know anything about competitive cycling, it's a really, really hard on your body and a hard discipline to kind of follow. If you follow the Tour de France and stuff like that, you have to live like a monk and train hard and stuff. Oh, yeah. So I suppose that would have kind of like maybe slowed down my development, because I was so into racing the bike that I was kind of like, you know, it's, you know, like the way Mickey Rourke was really into boxing. Yeah. You know, it kind of, you know, it kind of definitely sidetracked things for a while, didn't it? You know?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned you have a lot of different, you know, styles, and you have a lot of versatility to your music. That's definitely evident on this new album. Now, I would call it a blues rock album, but you have a lot of different influences on this album. Mike, can you kind of speak to that and where that comes from?
Yeah, I think there's always an undercurrent of a few different guys. One mainly kind of Clapton. I feel really at home kind of playing in that expressive style. Like a lot of guys of my age, you know what I mean, who would have made. I first saw Clapton in about 86, 87, you know, and I was right down the front and he kind of came out, oh, you know, playing a Les Paul, playing Crossroads, you know, and when you're 13 and you kind of see that, that's, you know, you're not going to forget that quickly, you know. So Clapton's been one of my main influences. So, and if you listen to kind of all the albums, there's a thread of trying to achieve something that he kind of does, which is to write great songs, but also great vehicles to show off what you do well, which is kind of what I would consider one of my strengths, is kind of the guitar playing and the lyrical content. So I think throughout there's a thread of that kind of like Eric Clapton influence there, but also there's the storytelling influence. I think I said earlier, like my mom was a big, you know, Leonard Cohen, Van Morrison, Bob Dylan fan. So that kind of influence of lyrics and stories, you know, I don't like songs to be too throwaway. I like the idea of being really cinematic and strong visually with the songs, and to kind of have a song which has a beginning, middle, and end. It doesn't have to completely make sense or anything, but so there's definitely that on the new album, because there's a song, you know, Snatched It From My Hand, which is a bit of a kind of a nod to the Celtic Tiger with the good times and then the big crash. And we all know what it feels like to kind of experience the crash, especially, you know, when you're working as a musician and stuff. And then there's kind of Delirium Town, which is the opener, which starts off all ambience, but then kind of goes into this kind of weird surreal world of being in a town where, you know, real things. It's a bit David Lynch. All these surreal things are happening, but using that descriptive cinematic kind of language that you might expect from like Springsteen, but strong identities of songs, you know. There's a little bit more country influence, maybe Americana influence on this album than there's been on other albums as well, where maybe Love Breaks the Fall was very, you know, like Philip Sayce kind of fuzz tones going on there and at that time. And now things are kind of getting a little bit cleaner and maybe, you know, a bit more Americana at times, you know.
So you talk about the influences, and I know the triumvirate of Dylan, Morrison, and Leonard Cohen. And I think of a song, Dunkirk Spirit, and where that sort of takes the listener. When you talk about storytelling, that's a track that stands out in my mind.
Well,
is that go ahead. I mean, I was just going to ask, is that a story that is told in the third person, or when you go ahead with that song, is that your experience? Is that what you see when you look around now?
Yeah, well, it's obviously kind of like a metaphor for coming together. You know what I mean? Why can't we all come together and help each other out? Why do we have to keep kicking each other in the balls? Like, you know what I mean? Why are we doing that? You know, so that song strangely was like, my mum mentioned that my granddad was in Dunkirk. And I said, why did he never tell me? What's like, because it's not as if we weren't close, like we knew that. And then I wrote this song. I kind of looked up Dunkirk and I heard about, you know, like the Allies were pushed to the, you know, to the far north of France. And then they had to basically evacuate from the beaches, and all the ferry boats from the UK and that came over, and they, whatever vessel you could get, you jumped on and basically got away from the enemy, if you know what I mean. So it's an amazing story, and there's obviously movies about it and stuff. So I thought that was a great idea for a song. It's a metaphor of coming together, because it's about, you know, people helping each other, and obviously the strong imagery that you can kind of use for that. And later on, my brother chirped in and he said, actually, he wasn't in Dunkirk, he was at D-Day. So, and then when I looked at that, I said, oh no, that's completely different, you know what I mean? But it didn't matter at that point. And my mum was going, oh, well, you can't do that song now because it's not factually correct. And I said, well, no, that's not the point. The point of the song is I don't know if metaphor is correct, but it's what it symbolizes. The story doesn't have to be factually correct. It can just be a story. Like, we can all write a fantasy about anything, can't we? You know, we can take the listener on a journey. And so it ended up being a really interesting song, and I think quite a dynamic song that stands out on the album. And with a song like that live as well, it's a great track to kind of play live, you know. It's got a very Springsteen element to it, I think. You know?
Yeah, definitely felt that. One of the songs that grabbed me was Nothing to Sing But the Blues. Tell us how that one came about.
I was thinking about that recently, because I was thinking, where did that one come from? Because I wrote it and forgot about it. And when I decided, my last album was Hey Kiddo, which was like a hark back to, you know, playing Gretches and doing all the rockabilly stuff, and it was all instrumental, which was probably for people who are following what I'm doing, probably a bit of a curveball. They weren't expecting that, but now in my set, it's really interesting to pop those songs with and pepper my set with those kind of songs, you know, especially when you put it after a slow blues. And we all need a good slow blues on a blues rock album, don't we? You know what I mean? It generally tends to be the track that people navigate to. I know that I do. Like, when I listen to a Doyle Brown Hall album, or Philip Sayce, or, you know, Joe Bonamassa, all these great artists that are out there, a lot of the time it's the slow ones, that, because it's the most, you know, invested, you know, you can feel the emotion in it. So I think I wrote that one when there's a Steve Earle tune called something. There's a Steve Earle tune which escapes me now, and it's something about the blues. And I remember thinking that was a beautifully, I can't remember what it's called now. But it's based on a Steve Earle tune. But obviously when you write, you go, I want to write a song like that. But about half an hour later, it's nothing like that at all, you know. So I think that's where it kind of originally came from. But a lot of it is kind of the imagery I was writing was like when me and my wife went to Paris. There's all that stuff about walking and swinging your shoes and stuff like that, where we were holidaying in Paris, and I was using that visually to kind of inform the lyrics. And it's about two people. You know, we all have to endure certain hardships in life, don't we? So there's times in our life where there's nothing to do but sing the blues. There's when you're under the cosh and bad things are happening, like loved ones are passing away, or you're transitioning from one job to the next, or, you know, it's impossible to escape that. No one's immune from the blues.
Yeah.
Now, Mike, earlier you mentioned your YouTube channel. And for those who aren't familiar, check out Mike's YouTube channel because it's great. He's got a lot of cool lessons and things like that on there. You've been doing that for a little while. Tell us what made you take that leap and jump into YouTube?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I think I joined YouTube in about 2007, and I started putting
so early.
Yeah, and I remember, you know, just right there teaching somebody and saying, come on, let's do the solo to Stairway to Heaven, or, you know, Smoke on the Water or something. And this is before like smartphones, really, you know what I mean? So,
right.
And I said, well, listen, you know what I'll do is I have a little handheld camera. I'll video it and I'll stick it up to the YouTube. Have you heard of the YouTube? You know, so I'd kind of do that, and it'd be really, really lo-fi, and it would be me actually not really trying very hard. But like, I go, well, it's got to be good enough for my student to watch it and see the fingerings, you know? So I just kind of go bump, you know, and play Stairway to Heaven solo, bump, stick it up on YouTube, and send the link to my student. And that's how I kind of started. I literally did hundreds of videos like that, and it became a great resource. So I could just, you know, when I was teaching someone, I could just send them the link. It was a nice little thing for my students to have. And then, you know, you could see it was growing. It was like this train that was gathering momentum, YouTube. And there was times where I kind of stepped back for a year or so because I was getting quite a lot of abuse from maybe using the wrong fingering or something. And I didn't really know how to react to that at the time. Now it's obviously like, it's just part and course of being on YouTube, isn't it? But I remember,
but back then you didn't really know that, right?
Yeah, so you'd be kind of have quite a lot of aggressive comments and stuff like that, and you'd be like, "Ooh, maybe, you know, maybe I'm stepping into a world where I don't belong," you know. So I maybe step back for 6 months or 8 months and go, "Well, there's plenty up there," and then maybe I'd have a slow day and I go, "You know what? I'll put something up on the YouTube," you know, and obviously it started to grow, and you started to see people get really popular, and it's basically as good as replaced TV, hasn't it? You know what I mean? Because I can't see what you guys do on telly. And
yeah, I pull up YouTube on my smart TV all the time.
Yeah.
And
I want to know what's happening in the blues rock world. I'm not going to find it on TV, but I'll find it at Blues Rock Review, you know. And there's loads of other channels. Like if I want to know about, you know, Marshalls or something, I can check out videos on Marshalls or guitars and, you know, things that interest me, or even cycling or whatever interests I might be into, you know what I mean? But so as it gathered momentum, then I started to take it a bit more seriously, but I kind of ebb and flow with it. My main mission was to get up to the 10,000 subscribers. But then as I hit that, I think it was right, COVID kind of kicked in round about then. And we had to make this big change, is like where we're living. So we're in the middle of moving at the moment. And I've kind of built a studio out on a farm. So there's been so much to do, but it's all almost like I've got like this ground bed of like about 11,500 subscribers. And when I go back to it in a couple of months, when we've actually fully moved and I'll have this studio space, my main mission is to get in there every day and really start making really strong content. You know what I mean? So, you know, that's my kind of plan, because it's a great medium and for learning, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you can reach all sorts of cross the pond audiences that you wouldn't just on the telly. I have a question that maybe would help some people out. For young artists getting started and jumping into YouTube and jumping in on putting yourself out there, easy to get into, but sometimes hard to keep up with and hard to monetize and make it worth your while. Plus, there's all the abuse, like you said. What nuggets of advice would you give someone young starting out on how to really make the most of the new technological avenues?
Yeah, I mean, it is really about how hard are you willing to work. You know, it's full on graft. So what you've got to do is try and learn your instrument and develop as a musician over here, but then you've got to learn to use the technology. And a lot of it comes down to you like having the confidence to kind of put yourself out there. And are you the kind of person who likes other people to do things for you? You know what I mean? If you are, then forget it, really. You've got to really do everything yourself, like everything, you know? So if you're kind of one of those DIY guys who can, you know, have a go and not be afraid to fail, then I think you do quite well. So you've really just got to be prepared to not make any money for quite a while. I don't really make any money out of YouTube, really, to be honest. Like a few quid pops in my account every now and then. It's like, great, some money for petrol, you know what I mean? But it's definitely not paying the mortgage, you know. Right. But it's really kind of hard graft, and it just shows to be a musician these days. It's, you know, you have to be a great everything. There's nowhere to hide. You have to be able to edit video. You have to be able to present yourself. You know, have a clear idea of what you want to do. You know, what genre do you want to be working in? What, you know, and it's hard enough for most musicians to look in the mirror and go, "What am I good at?" You know, and maybe YouTube helps like that, because when you see yourself up there, you go, "Oh, I'm a bit dodgy at, you know, playing." You know, Eddie Van Halen, but I can do that Richie Blackmore thing really well. So that maybe it might help steer you, you know, as you do it. Like anything, the more you do it, the more it kind of informs your progression, doesn't it? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Mike. Well, you just released the new album, Built to Last. For those who want to pick up the new album or want to hear it, where can they do that?
Well, you can listen, you can stream it on Spotify and all the usual streaming places. And you can see it right there.
Yeah, bring it up to the front, Mike.
Yeah, Built to Last. You can get it from MikeBrookfield.com. You know, yeah, I'm really proud of it. It's, you know, it's something that represents me really well. And I'm looking forward to gigging it and getting it out there as much as I can, you know. And it's hard to, you know, because there's a lot of noise out there, because, you know, new music. There's so much great music. I was watching your last video there about albums coming out, and just like, I don't know how many artists that you featured there. It must be like 8 or something.
Yeah, it was a busy week.
Yeah, they're all great. They're all rocking. And you're like, that's a lot of music to kind of digest. But, you know, if you like guitar playing, bluesy guitar playing with America, you know, strong songwriting and lyrical content, please check it out.
Awesome. Well, that's Built to Last. Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. I really appreciate it. I love what you do. Keep doing it.
Thanks, Mike. We will.
All right. That's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Blues Rock Show. For Mike Brookfield and Willie Witten, I'm Pete Francis. We'll see you next time.